I'd like to welcome you all to this session at 3 o'clock, which we are hoping that you'll enjoy. We're all excited about it, aren't we, team?
Yep. Very much so.
So surreal experience, obviously, with our disco hats on. But we're all talking about food today and sustainability. Who here is involved in food? Who here is a farmer? We have one farmer. Duncan. Who grows any food? Any growers? Anyone touch the soil? Get involved? Perfect. Okay, just so we know where we're at. Brilliant. I'm Claire Mackenzie. I am producer of a documentary called 6 Inches of Soil, independent British documentary which came out last year. It's been really well received, which has been wonderful for us, but that's because this topic is supersonically important, the importance of soil, and regeneration of our food and farming system. So if you want to watch it, you can via our website, etc. We're doing a big release this Friday on Apple and Amazon. And I think they're showing clips here at the Food Hub. Anyway, that's enough about me. I've got amazing 5 people here on the panel who I really want you to hear from. So first of all, I will introduce you to David Moore from Complete, and he'll tell you a bit more about himself and what he does.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Moore, Group Head of ESG at the Complete Food Group. We're a large UK-based food manufacturing company, 16 sites around the UK, 1.2 billion turnover, making lots of products into the UK retailers. So 80% of what we do is in their private label. So we do lots of savoury pastries, so sausage rolls, pork pies, quiche. We do lots of fried snacking. We do olives, antipasti, plant-based. Lots of different product categories, mainly sit around the kind of chilled convenience area. So we've had our ESG strategy going now for just over 3 years. Food to feel good is our ambition, and we set some pretty aggressive climate targets, validated science-based targets. Being in the centre of that value chain, the system is really important to us, and we would love to get much more closer to the farm. So again, keen to kind of get that out in this discussion today. But it's really important that we have that debate around the food system and how important it is for this country. So yeah, really looking forward to this. Thanks, Claire.
And we have Emma from Nestle.
Hi, everybody. Lovely to be with you today. I'm Emma Keller, Head of Sustainability at Nestle. I think actually, Claire, when you said who's involved in food, everyone should say yes, because we all eat food every single day.
You're here.
3 times a day, at least, probably 5 in my case. So we are all involved in food and the food system in some way through the choices we make. So at Nestle, similar, we make lots of branded products, everything from Kit Kat and Quality Street through to Nescafe, Nespresso, baby milks, a whole bunch of different categories. And for us, this is a real live topic. We're a food business, so we absolutely depend on nature. We depend on a stable climate. And these are 2 things that we are losing, and we are facing challenges at the moment. So it's a really important conversation to have today. I'm so glad we have a farmer with us as well, so we can start to get into some of the real challenges we're facing and the solutions to them as well.
Yeah, and now we have Ryan, who also actually does directly work, has a farm and works with farmers and loves eating, I'm sure, like all of us here. Ryan, go for it.
Thanks, Claire. No, I certainly do like eating, and I prefer to eat good, climate-positive food that is nutrient-dense. But anyway, so yeah, I'm Ryan Cameron. I'm a founder and CIO of Regenerate Asset Management. We're an impact investment group based here in the UK. We've got offices in Leeds and London. We founded the business in 2019 to be a change maker. Investing in land use. We decided to specialize in regenerative agriculture because we could see that it brought sort of solutions. Our approach was to look through the lens of the farmer, the landowner, and technology, and that sort of is how our 3 pillars were formed. So our first pillar is called Regenerate Outcomes. And this is an education and training program here in the UK. We have 20,000 hectares worth of farmers that are signed up to our program. The program provides funding and coordination of resources for farmers to transition to regenerative agriculture. What do they get? They get upfront training and education as well as over time. They get baselining covered. They get match funding for CapEx. And they get a new income stream, for their business. So that business line is we're trying to make change. We're trying to drive tipping point here in the UK. By our numbers, maybe we're 1/20th of the way since receiving our first funding from DEFRA in sort of 2020. We've raised money from 2 institutions into that business line in 22 and 23, and we're moving now at a point to scale. And that's what we need to do to create sort of tipping point. Our second vertical is what we call the Reza Fund. And this is an owner-operator business. It's sort of a real asset model where we're buying farms and building them into businesses, into midstream processing, packing, and so forth, because traceability is important. It's a 150 million euro fund. We've deployed most of that at this stage, and we're raising a successor fund going back out to the market later in the year. I'll come back to why that business is important, but we're in Portugal, Spain, Denmark, UK. We like things like blueberries, cherries, pistachios, sheep's cheese, and sheep dairy. Last is our technology arm, and this is investing in early stage technologies that we think will support nature-based farming. So we made investments in the likes of robotics, biostimulants, non-chemical pesticides, and so forth. And so these kind of pillars give us a great ecosystem for innovation, because we see the sort of food production system through these lenses, and happy to be here.
Thank you. And Duncan next, who has very brilliantly come off his farm at one of the busiest times of the year.
I don't know about that. It's, how do I follow that? I'm a third generation farmer. I think probably classed as a rare breed nowadays. But we're a 3,500 acre project at home. Really passionate about soil health. We use the word regenerative farming quite a lot, and trying to educate and inspire people to get involved in that. We ran 12 years ago, started a small brewery. That's gone really well. And over the last sort of 30 years at home, it's taken me that long to work out where the opportunity is in landscape. And so we set up this umbrella brand called Longbridge Regenerative that is trying to reimagine what landscape can be and how we can inspire a new generation to get involved with it.
Thank you. And last but very much not least, Tim is our tech official, so please introduce it.
Thank you. A tech official, I'll take that. Great to meet everyone. Fantastic panel. It's a privilege to be here. We are a green tech unicorn out of Germany. We basically applying a responsibly AI-powered platform to help the entire value chain to be traceable, transparent, compliant, and all of that good stuff. In the food value chain, we've got a rich background where we work with a lot of the major supermarkets across Europe. We support them with our traceability solutions. And our intent is to just help the value chain to better automate, better understand where the value is, and to support it in the changing climate. So we have most of the major supermarkets are now our customers, and a lot of the value chain that goes with that. So we're happy to help. Thank you.
Lovely. So my first question, I'm going to start with Duncan so we can start sort of piecing out the supply chain a bit. So Duncan, as a farmer, you face climate change more than any of us here. You are dealing with the challenges of nature and everything that throws at you. I'd love you to highlight those challenges and what you've been facing with ever since you started farming, and perhaps also farming with your father and your uncle. So.
Yeah, I think where do we start? I think we certainly live in very challenging times, and year on year, I think last year, for example, speaking to a lot of farmers, they were pretty grumpy about life, whatever. And this year they really are down in the doldrums. And I cannot stress enough that the amount of pressure that we are under, we're getting it from all angles. And we just need some certainty. There's one thing my grandfather said to me many years ago. He said, Duncan, only worry about things you can control. And the weather's not one of them. So I think, we joke and we talk about 5 mil of rain here and 10 mil of rain here. And my friends and neighbours in the pub say, Duncan, you're obsessed about the weather. I said, I know, but 20 mil in May in the right week is the difference in my profit and loss. And I go, really? I said, yeah, it's that serious. And so I think we talk about resilience. and we need to build in resilience. I think fundamentals around UK agriculture is underpinned by diversification, which I think is a disgrace. I think we should be thinking about food production more seriously, but we also should stop polarising. And we've been on a 10-year no-till journey, and it challenges 50 years of convention. It really does. And we've had a lot of heated debates with my late uncle and father. I think the best one was, if that's the best you can do, I want no more to do with this farm. And I've still got the bruise from that one. And it turned out that crop turned out to be the best on the farm that year. And I think the other thing is never gloat when you get it right, because you'll get it wrong at some point, and you can just pull it out the bag. So I think it challenges, and we've been farming out of a can for 50 years, and we know it's a shit way of farming. It doesn't do the planet any good, and I think technology will eventually catch up and change. But these systems, there's some mavericks there, which I'm not one, but I'm silly enough to listen and understand, and have a curious brain, curious mind. And I spent a lot of time in Kenya, and a lot of my inspiration came from there, funnily enough. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so we just take some basic principles, use some technology. I can plant my seeds where they were, an inch of where they were the year before. And that's pretty mental now. So we can then start utilising, take inspiration from nature and start utilising different seeds and different seeds, what they bring, and they can use the root channels, use last year's root channels, all sorts of crazy things. And I love telling stories. So the brewery was a great way of people going, I didn't know your regen barley went into the beer. Yeah, and we put sunflowers in our cover crops. Duncan, why do you put sunflowers in your cover crops? So people ask me the question. Yeah, and we run a big bunch of wild ponies on the downs now. Duncan, why have you got wild ponies on the downs? So you ask me, why have you got them? And then we have this discussion around farming, why it's fun, and stop to think it's just about food. Duncan, are you rewilding? No, I'm not. It has its place, but I think we need to stop polarising everything and have this middle ground and talk about food and conservation in the same sentence. I'll stop there, shall I? I don't know.
It's a great place to start. Well, it's brilliant. Thank you. And Emma, this really leads to you working in Nestle, and you come from WWF, so you've got that conservational hat on. You have really specialised in regen ag, and I'd like to unpick that a bit for people here. People might not understand what that term is, they might not understand what direct drilling or anything. But when you at Nestle, you're not going to be free of these challenges, because it's food you're producing. And I learned recently on a podcast that we're doing that the coffee is down by 40% this year. We should all be paying $10 a cup for coffee. This is actually a luxury good. We've made it a commodity good. It's a complicated thing. And how is Nestle coping with that sort of thing? Because anyone and everyone is going to be affected, even very small food producers, very large food companies.
Absolutely. And it's so good to hear from Duncan. My favourite days of work are when I get to go and talk to the farmers and hear the challenges, and then look at what opportunities and solutions we can come up with together. Absolutely. No food business is immune from this. If Duncan and other farmers' businesses go down, so does ours, because we depend on the commodities, the crops, the produce that they're growing that go into the foodstuffs that we make for everybody every day. And coffee is a really great example. Yield is down. There are huge challenges. Cocoa is even worse. It's 5 times higher in price than it's ever been on record. And when you've got a business that makes Kit Kats and lots of different confectionery products, this is a real challenge for our balance sheet. But it's such a moment in time for sustainability professionals to engage with your board and your leadership, because they're like, oh, this commodity price, what's going on? Tell you what's going on. It's climate change. It's nature loss. It's increases in pests and diseases that are all stacking to create this huge inflation that we're seeing in cost. And then the business goes, well, how do we mitigate against that? How do we protect ourselves? And it's about investing in regenerative agriculture. It's about making sure that we're taking the steps that mean these shocks aren't going to go away. Climate change is here. We need to adapt. We need to continue to mitigate, but this is happening. So it's about how do we invest in these values chains to make them more resilient when these future shocks come, and they will come. So for us at Nestle, regenerative agriculture has become our absolute backbone of our business. And it's a really interesting one. There isn't a firm definition. No one can really agree on exactly what it is, but it is a set of principles that we can all back that do a lot of what Duncan's talked about. Integrating livestock. So I love your wild ponies. It's about using technology where we can to understand the soil. It's at the very core, it's about soil health. Soil is the currency of our food system, and we've exploited it for so long by pouring pesticides and fertilizers and synthetic chemicals. We just can't continue to do that. And the 6 inches of soil shows that really, really well. So it's such a fundamental to Nestlé. There's lots going on, but it's a really good moment for us to kind of get the board's attention and get the commitment to this.
Thanks, Emma. Ryan, and you've alluded to a few of them, but if you can highlight the challenges that you're hoping to tackle.
Yeah, I mean, some of them we've addressed here, talking about resilience, talking about profitability, talking about, water cycles, I guess. From our point of view, we're trying to tackle things where we're moving as a leader and gathering data to try to change behavior. So what are the climate challenges or climate risks that we see, effectively, as an institutional farmer? So, that's water. I mean, there are many, but the top three, it's water, it's erosion, water erosion and emissions are the top three. So let's take water. So water cycles are breaking. It's too much water, not enough water, flooding, droughts, what's happening there. And it's about soil health. So, the soil is not acting as a sponge. The soil needs to act as a sponge. So, the runoff is happening because of, conventional agriculture, bare land. Land is not meant to be bare. It's unnatural. So using regenerative practices, you can create voids in the soil. Like, these are actual physical spaces created by roots in the ground, life, microbiology that's there. All the spaces in the mycorrhizal, networks, and that, creates soil as a sponge, retaining water when it's dry and stopping runoff. Erosion is another big one. Soil is an asset. In the U.S. just this year already, in Texas, Indiana, Illinois, huge, kind of dust storms that, we haven't seen since the 1930s. 1934 to 1940, 75% of the topsoil in the U.S. was lost. What's happening there? This is the loss of the Great Plains, this loss of ecosystem and habitat, loss of the bisons, loss of, grasslands, replaced with conventional agriculture. So what do we need to do about that? I mean, some of the things we're doing at Regenerate. So in our permanent crop strategies, like our blueberries in Portugal, we bought a blueberry orchard from a farmer. The farmer's doing, a good job in his eyes, paying money for chemical inputs to remove weeds between the rows to create bare land. Why are you doing that? You're spending money for something you don't need, which is bad from a business point of view, to try to eradicate weeds and create bare land. So what do we do using regenerative practices? We'll sit there, not use chemical inputs. We'll run livestock in the winter, in this case, use that biology to start activating what's going on in the ground, life in the soil, roots in the ground. We didn't even pay for, cover crop seeds, because actually the seed bank in the soil, those seeds are there. And when you activate integrating livestock, you start to see life, biodiversity, and those weeds are not there. They're mitigated by the life and the thriving biodiversity. Weeds are there because they're a symptom of dry land. That's what comes first, in order to start regenerating land. One more, if there's time, emissions. I'll hit for a minute. Emissions, where do you even start? Factory farming is 11 to 14% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Let's take one example, shed-based dairy. What's happening in there. Animals aren't meant to be in the barn. They're in the barn at scale. They're producing slurry. Slurry is emissions. You're spending time, energy, and resources, moving the slurry to, a tank. That's infrastructure that has a carbon footprint to be created. It's got emissions. You're spending money on diesel emissions to then go and spread it on the field, this liquid slurry. I mean, cows have 4 legs. They go around in pasture-based models. They move around and deposit what they need to where it needs to be without all the emissions, much lower emissions and actually much more profitable.
Thank you, Ryan. So if you want to talk more about all of this afterwards, grab these people, because there's a lot to say here. David, moving on a bit higher up the supply chain, I'd like to the challenges with your head of ESG, what you're tackling and coping with.
It's tough. I think it's been fascinating hearing these guys talk. I think that farming voice doesn't come out loudly enough. So it's great to have Duncan on the panel. And I think one of the biggest challenges for a large food business is still being here in 30 years' time. And like the concern I have, and Emma mentioned getting involved with boards, it is gradually getting there, but it's only getting there because we're starting to have more and more shocks in the system. And eventually the system can't take those shocks, and we will hit that tipping point, and we will start to see those crop fails. And that's the bit that worries me, is I think probably in this room there may be a bit of an understanding about what that would mean, but it's a pandemic style event. When we do have that tipping point happen, there won't be the foods we expect to be on the shelves. And I think that realization of understanding as a big food company, the impact we have on climate, but also the impact climate has on us is huge. And one, from a business risk, but also there's a massive opportunity. Like if you genuinely get this right now, one will be here in 30 years' time, but we will have diversified our portfolio, particularly in the plant-based arena. We see that massive growth in, we own a pickles and ferments brand called Vadas, so kimchi, sauerkraut. Massive growth. Not only is it delicious, but it's healthy, it's nutritious. We haven't really touched on nutrition today, but it's a huge part of that. Nutrient density, those really healthy soils are just generally healthier for you. So some of the products that come from a regen system, those macronutrients, much higher. And I think for me that's not really resonating. Like it's kind of getting into the food system in the big retailer space, into the manufacturers. But is it at a consumer level? Absolutely not. And I think we need to get... I hate to think we kind of eventually have a pandemic style event where there's no food on the shelves to eventually take action. Like that's the wrong time. The right time is to invest as businesses and brands into regen ag in particular, focus on it, but get that to the consumer. I think some brands, you guys are doing a good job of getting that message across, but we need everyone to be doing that. And I think consumers have the power to drive that forward, but we've equally got to give them those fantastic, delicious products that they want to come back and buy every time. So I think the system's broken. I think, as we talked about, there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of great stuff happening. I think it's just getting that out there, resonating with people. Because ultimately, if we don't change the system, we are going to become very unstuck, I think, in a not too distant future.
Yeah, the big thing really is that we'd love regenerative not to be this thing. It's just that is how we farm. We farm in that way. So Tim, you have millions of customers and clients, and particularly obviously working with retail. And what challenges are you seeing that they are dealing with that you're helping them with? But talk about the challenges first, and then solutions later.
Well, yes, and if I may, just reflect on again, just to echo the point, hearing from the farmers, both the positive and the big challenges has been really helpful. And I was reflecting on where can we help in some way, and I think it's the fact that we're mapping. We have the entire value chains, and we have, through responsible AI, we have huge amounts of data. I think it's, can we turn that data into being helpful, valuable insights that can be used to educate those at the top of the chain and above the retail, the finance guys, to say, there's work to be done here, but we can do it at, we can move fast at scale using technology in some way to help. So I think with the large retailers, we're helping them more directly at the moment on some of their regulatory responsibilities. But I think, ironically, some of those regulatory responsibilities are making them have a greater purpose and desire to better understand their value chain beyond tier 1, tier 2. So I think the twain can meet, right? I think that's a role that not just us, but technology can play.
Perfect. You can give us a bit more detail later. Duncan, coming back to you. I'd love you to discuss. You've alluded to some of the positives, but just give us a bit more of how you're running your business, how you're looking to the future to make it more diverse and resilient in these changing times.
I will. I've just got to jump on. It just came into my head. It's in my silly brain here. But
lovely.
I sat on a panel earlier in the year in a monster global company who are looking to turn into regenerative. I mentioned them, and I asked a direct question: what's the most important thing in your business model? Yeah, and they said the consumer. I said, I rest my case. I said, what do you mean? I said, until you actually made the most important thing in your model is the land from where it comes from, you're kidding yourselves. And I think it takes enormous change, mindset from the most senior to go, hang on, we need to rethink that.
Do you mind if I come in on that? I think it's so true. And I think I'm ex-retail. I spent a lot of my career in Sainsbury's. And actually that model for the last 40 years has been trying to give the consumer what we think they want. And actually we've done a really rubbish job of telling them where that food comes from. And I think we don't as a country, we've completely lost that culture and that connection to food. And I think it's only from hearing from the farmers directly you can start to see, actually, if you don't have that really robust, resilient farming system, then the consumer's got nothing to eat. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right to kind of call it out and frame that in that way.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think, but final that one, I think it does get part to us. I think the trouble is some of this better food is only staying with those of us that can perhaps afford it. And that's a massive issue you have. We'll bring it up because there's a quote on Complete's website I want to discuss later. So Duncan, perhaps if you can discuss as a farmer how you're going to try and get this food that will be made available for everyone, that can make us healthy and happy, but also make your business diverse and actually survive for the future, because most farms at the moment don't look like they're going to.
I think it's fascinating. I think we all need to agree on what we're aiming for. I think the one thing I spent 20 years battling with ecologists and various other people saying, oh, we want a blue butterfly, we want a green one, we want a yellow one, and they'll argue about how to get it. The scrub's in the wrong place, or the grasses are in the wrong place, or whatever. And it's all real. It's serious. It's well meant. But the one thing we all agree on is we all want clean water. So how do we get clean water? And if we can understand how do we get to that point, suddenly then we're all having the same conversation. It's dialogue. It's a vocabulary. If we all use the same vocabulary, then we're all pulling in the same direction. And so we spend a lot of time at home inviting farmers to come and see. And the silly thing is that every farmer thinks everybody else's land's better than theirs. And so they'll never believe you until they've seen it on their own farm. But trying stuff is difficult, and because we certainly in the UK we only get one crop a year. You get it wrong and you've got to live with it for the rest of the time. And it's we own a little bit of land and we can afford to take some gambles, make some mistakes. If you're a rented farmer, which most are, you can't afford to take the risk. And we've been in this hamster wheel. Yeah, got to go, and you make it sound so easy to this regen farming. Christ, it's really not. Yeah, it's the most hardest thing we've ever done. Yeah, it's challenging. You've got to take everyone with you. Yeah, you got to bring your older generations with you, and they look at you a bit sideways and go, "Really?" I'm like, "Come on, let's have a go." And you learn, and if we can all agree on where we're trying to get to, and have a little play, have a little go. And I think that what the government's, I'm not going to get political on it, but the new stewardship agreements they've put out are really sensible. It's like a sweet shop. Try a bit. Didn't like that. Put it back. Try that. And actually, they just pull the rug out from underneath us. So we need some certainty. We need to understand where we're going. And then engage. We're blessed enough at home down on the southeast where we're surrounded by lots and lots of people that are very often just don't understand where their food comes from. So come and see and understand and look. Yeah, and we talk about obesity. We talk about exercise. You know what? Get off your bum and go and look. Walk to the top of the hill. Yeah, and go and look at these wild ponies. They're mega. Yeah, you make you feel better as well. And so we try and bring these flags and these shiny objects and say, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. And by the way, it's all linked. So I think it's interesting. This Longbridge regenerative umbrella we're building is getting a lot of traction in terms. It's tiny. We're a tiny little project, but it's real, and it's trying to articulate why it's real, how it's real, what does the new model look like. The greenwashing is not an option anymore. Big business, you have to get involved in a landscape scale, not so damn big that you're tending to be managing it all when you're not. You need 4, 5, 6 farmers actually going to have huge impact on quite a big area. Get 4 or 5 heads together, communicate and understand and try, and then people want to go, huh, that's cool. Or we talk about cattle, we talk about dairying, we talk about TB, we talk about all these big complex issues. Yeah, let's just try and get them in one place and talk about it, so people go, oh, now I see, now I understand. I'll stop.
No, it's brilliant. What Duncan is particularly alluding to is farmers working brilliantly with clusters, and you're seeing amazing. There's like one in Northeast Cotswolds, which is growing bigger and bigger day by day. But by working together and working in water catchment areas, it's a really incredible way of being. And any of us you can contact local farm cluster groups and get involved and understand. So Emma, talking about working with farmers, how are you doing it? How are you making sure the farmers looked after well, paid enough? These are all huge issues which farmers, half the time, whenever it's milk, they'll say they're getting 11p the pound. It's never been a great relationship with any food companies. How are you guys tackling that? What is the future for Nestle in relationships, and what projects are you doing at the moment? I know those have been happening for the last few years.
Yeah, lots going on. I'll come to that in a second. I just want to pick up on a couple of things Duncan said. I think seeing is believing is absolutely critical, and some of the most traction I've got is when I've taken my leadership teams to a farm to actually see it, to talk to the farmer. Ideally, when it's chucking it down with rain is even better, because then they see quite how hard it is, especially if I can get them to a dairy farm where I'm like, right, bus is picking you up at 4 a.m, get out the door. They genuinely start to go, oh my gosh, this is hard work, and look at what they're taking on. The second thing I wanted to pick up on that you mentioned was risk. And you, as a farmer, you take on all the risk. You take on the risk of our contracts. You take on the risk of the weather, of the pests, of the regulation changing from one day to the next. You take that on. So I think what our job as a business is to share that risk with you. And that's a really important part of what we do. So we will say, right, can you try this on a bit of your land? And you know what, if it doesn't go well, we'll share the cost with you, or we'll pay for it even better. So taking on that risk is really important. And the third thing quickly I wanted to pick up on that you said was the consumer. And that's where our might of our marketing teams and our brand communications can actually connect consumers to where their food comes from. We've all seen the YouTube videos of kids going, oh, where's your bacon come from? It's come from Tesco. They don't know what animal it's come from. They don't actually know how that's produced. That is a big challenge with our food system, and we've got a lot to do there. We've not cracked it, but we're really proud of the fact that our Kit Kats are made with 100% British milk from just Cumbria and Scotland. So all the farmers around that area go in to produce 2 billion Kit Kats that are produced every single year in York. And being able to communicate to that consumers is really valuable. So what are we doing with farmers? Lots of things. I'm really, really proud of our dairy partnership. Our entire factory that produces our confectionery is located where it's located because that's where the dairy farms are. So we depend on those farmers being there today and in 30 years' time. So it's really, really important. That's why we're located there. We've been working with our dairy farmers now for 21 years, just celebrated our 21st birthday. You don't stay working with someone that long unless you build trust, unless you go on the journey together, and unless you can really have the honest conversations about what works and what doesn't. So love talking to our dairy farmers because actually a few of them, real personal stories. I turn up, I sit around their kitchen table with their family, and they tell me back in 2009, when the dairy industry was on its knees, we came in and said, we're going to pay more for your milk. The market price is down here, but we're going to pay more. And actually, we saved a lot of farmers going out of business. But that was crucial to us because otherwise we wouldn't be able to make Kit Kat or Aero or Quality Street or many of the other products. So it's absolutely, you've got to be there when things are really tough. And that then means that when we ask farmers to do weird and wonderful things, like dairy farmers planting trees in the middle of their fields, you don't often see a pasture with lots of trees. Our farmers are up for it. They recognise that we're doing it for good reason. It's got soil benefits. It's got animal welfare benefits because the cows can get shade. It's got a whole host of biodiversity benefits. But the farmers are like, yeah, cool, we'll do that. And then what we also do is we pay them a sustainability bonus to do it so that they're not losing out and actually they're incentivised and they see that they want to be part of this programme. Very different context in wheat. It's more of a commodity market. So we take a very different landscape approach, recognising that what one farm does could be amazing for water quality, but if the neighbouring farm is doing something completely different, that water is going to be dirty. So you have to look at the landscape. You have to bring that ecosystem of farmers together. And we're still learning. We haven't cracked it all, but we're absolutely on that journey. And I'd love to come visit if I can to hear more about what you guys are doing too.
Great, thank you, Emma. My one concern, I would love to see Nestle produce something that's not a Kit Kat, that's healthy, so that regenerative wheat can stay and milk be really good for that person. That's a lovely little challenge. So David, actually, yeah, I'll go today. We'll come back to Ryan. So on your website, it says transforming the way we work to set a new standard in good food for all. Food which is nutritious, sustainable, and affordable. How on earth are you achieving that? Those are huge, Natalie.
It's incredibly ambitious, and I think slightly different to the Nestle team. But arguably our biggest stakeholder is our retail customers. So 80% of what we produce is in their brand. So actually, not only are we trying to do our own thing with our own relationships with those suppliers, actually we can only do it with the agreement of that retail customer. So it's a constant challenge of, oh, look, we've got this we could use. We've got some regen flour that actually we'd love to put into your pastry. It tastes great. It's highly nutritious. It's a bit more expensive. What do you want to do? And actually, at the moment, that conversation's still very binary. It's still very, yeah, we're not quite there yet. We're not sure our consumers going to pay that more for it. So it's a constant challenge of supplying the data, having those conversations, because actually sustainability, we get it. And those conversations aren't really translating to those commercial kind of day-to-day buying conversations. So that's our biggest challenge, is saying how we want to be more involved in the food system. We want to get closer to farmers, but there's a bit of a barrier there, which you don't necessarily have as a brand. I think I'm slightly envious because we've got 20% of our products that are brands, so we can do things. But again, we're selling those to retailers, and we don't have a Kit Kat brand that every retailer sells. So I think that's a challenge, and I think the system hasn't changed for a number of years. I think that bringing the farmer voice in is important. I don't think we really understand the true value of food in this country. I think the system itself has been developed over many, many years. So, like we were talking kind of before this about the cost of milk, like how a kind of 2-pack of a 2-pint of milk is essentially £1 is bonkers when you think of all the input, all the hours, all those rainy days the farmers have to go through, and then we take that milk and we'll put it into a quiche with some egg and lots of flour. We'll make it into lovely quiche. I think the price of that quiche, I'm probably going to be sacked for saying this, but like for me, it's too cheap. I don't think we really appreciate what goes into that food system. And I think back on the health point you made earlier, I don't think we're really prioritizing those products that are healthy for you. And I think actually, if you're a consumer, it's really hard to buy the right thing that's doing good for you and doing good for the planet. I think that cost model is not really there. And I think you mentioned kind of government earlier, Duncan. I think there's a big role. I think the national food strategy is coming. It's been coming for a while. I think we're all waiting here, expecting it to deliver in a big way. It won't be perfect, but if it can join up all these dots of this value chain that most of us are sat in here, from retail all the way down to farm, and develop a food system that's resilient and is going to be here in the long term, then we've got a chance. And I think the ambition we've got is there, but it's not easy. But it's a day-to-day challenge trying to get those conversations into our own boardrooms and then further up the chain into our customers.
Yeah, definitely your roles in ESG and sustainability are tough. Ryan, you alluded to working with farmers. Why on earth, with you as an investment head on, would you go and work with and then buy farms as well? Tell us.
Well, so it's about bringing solutions. I mean, we see investment as solving problems, and there are a lot of issues that we've talked about in the food and ag system. Things are complex. I mean, Emma, you talk about I just putting trees in the middle of a dairy farm. I mean, I had that discussion with our head of dairy operations for our Danish platform the other week, and I'm amazed I still have a head on my shoulders, because an individual farmer, if you're not paying for those trees, that's a heavy capex for those farmers to put in. And you, especially in dairy, you don't want to be disrupting the very particulars of the, fat, fat percentages and protein percentages that you need to get. So, I mean, we're looking at, putting a tree crop around the edge of the farm where you're dual using, fence posts, replacing the cost of fence posts and so forth. And maybe we will end up, at some stage putting trees in the middle. But the point is, these are all really difficult discussions. So, in the UK, 90% of the farmers are individual farmers. And this is a huge amount of complexity. These are big financial decisions. You've got supply chain that's, working to help. There's uncertainty back on the farmer, and so this goes back to, for us to try to help tackle these issues and create solutions. It's about education and training. It's about leadership and resources. And lastly, it's about policy. So, our Regenerate Outcomes business is here in the UK, and that's what we're doing. We're here to support farmers. It's a farmer to farmer. We've the advisory board, are farming and regenerative practitioners themselves. Farmers, we find react much better speaking with other farmers, trading ideas, but it's bringing that coordinated, support that a farmer doesn't have. They're running a farm, they don't have time, to go and study again in university. In university, a lot of the, it's only recent that there's, regenerative coursework available. So, it's about bringing solutions, and education is one of them. The other is, leadership, scale, and resources. So, back to the point, individual farmers have a big challenge. So let's say a smallholder farmer, wants to embrace the risk of, converting to regenerative, they end up with a more resilient farm and ideally a better, P&L. It's not, it's easy to say. There's a lot of work and things that go into getting that. But that's while that's as difficult as that is, there's a big gap there because you're now decommoditizing. So there's a whole cost to that very well-intentioned smallholder farmers who want to become regenerative struggle. They do their best to get the education and training. They go and do this, but all of a sudden you got to pay for brand, you got to pay for marketing, route to market, distribution, and all of that. And so that's where our Resa Fund sort of comes in, where we sort of say, we'll go alongside as neighbors. We're built up and resourced to bring, global expertise from around the world, create strategies locally, and begin that, discussion with the supply chain, because we are geared with the expertise to structure and take those risks, and build conviction to be a leader. So, and the last point is, around policy, maybe it's a bit of a boring one. Policy is not going to innovate, but you need to be plugged in. We won't get anywhere if the policy doesn't support this. So what do we need? We need data. We need innovation. We need, commercialization. Until we have data, we spend some time with the UK government and, the Department of Agriculture in Denmark.
You.
Yeah. But we don't spend too much because we're working on getting the data. Once you have the data, the conversation becomes much more powerful. And, that's why we're doing this and here to help.
Talking about data and tech, Tim, I'm going to bring you in. You okay? What are you offering? What's happening? You've grown hugely, very quickly. Describe some of the success and some of the technological sort of innovation and the legislation that you're helping navigate.
Sure. Well, thank you. I think I keep reflecting on what I'm hearing and thinking about, because I know we were born out of Germany, and I feel perhaps Germany, in some respects, they've been using our technology in hundreds and really close to 1,000 supermarkets for a long time, where you can hover your phone over a product to see the provenance of where it came from, and it's kind of, perhaps they're a little bit ahead. I don't know. I don't recall that in some of the UK supermarkets, but I feel like I keep thinking about ways that we're already helping, where we could apply some things to here from what I've been hearing. But I suppose our success has been predicated on our ability to move fast, provide a technology that enables people to, where there's a compliance related element, to get compliant super fast with a lot of automation. I think we're trying to enable people to focus on their core businesses in whatever stage of the value chain they are. And I think we're able to do that at scale. And I think it's the learnings that come from that data. I think data is another area reflecting on where we can help to give the insights needed at each stage of the value chain in order to affect change, to support the farmers at the very beginning of the chain. With EUDR, which is a deforestation-free regulation that was brought in, that affects 7 commodities and companies that use those commodities. I think we have something like a 90+% market share, because we've been able to effectively help everyone in the value chain, because we already were, to provide the relevant information at scale to solve for that problem. So complexity doesn't give us any concern. That's kind of where we get involved. So I think it's a combination of those things. As I reflect on what I've heard here from the farm and from some of the UK specific areas, it's given some additional ideas of where we might be able to support technologically from the retailer all the way through.
Yeah, I think one of those that's coming through is the nutrition thing, isn't it? The declaration, that's one of the tech. So thank you. We have, I think, less than 10 minutes. Has anyone got a burning question? Yes, brilliant. Gentlemen, I think the midway.
The mic on its way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really interesting discussion, really great insight. Thank you for that. I would like to ask particularly David and Emma, how do we increase the influence on the retailer and the supply chains to lead consumer behaviour change? And if for some context, I would describe the white shell egg situation that we had during COVID. For years, the retailers said consumers didn't like them. As soon as we had a massive egg shortage during COVID, there were white shell eggs everywhere, and they've been there ever since. They made that change in a matter of months when the profits were at risk. How do we apply that kind of thinking, that urgency, to something like meat chicken, where you can buy a chicken that's been intensively reared for £6.50 and yet RSPCA assured or organic is around 9-10 quid?
I can take that one. It's not easy, and I think I kind of mentioned earlier the last 40 years we've effectively created a food system that's been built around the consumer, and we've kind of given the consumer what we think they want. I think there's an onus on us as a food manufacturer, as a brand, to try and make the consumer more aware of where the products come from. And I think you can label products. You can say to the consumer, actually, here's the nutritional density, here's the environmental impact. There's a lot of work happening within DEFRA on that at the moment. You can give the consumer the information, but they're not going to make that change. They're not going to make it quick enough. I think the other option is through retailers. They can decide what they put on their shelves, and that's a bit more difficult for them to do, because there's a first mover disadvantage to suddenly taking products off the shelf that actually the consumers have been buying, and I think that's tough. I think the other option is regulation. Dare I say it? I think there's an opportunity here for regulation to come in and almost force the hand. So the HFSS regulation around salt, sugar, fat, believe it, probably not great for you guys, but in terms of the kind of wider food system, that has really helped change what goes on shelf. So I think there's a combination of regulation really helping to support the sector, effectively saying you can and can't put this on. Now, it may all be longer down the track. It's a bit controversial, but we could end up with some kind of meat tax in the future. It may or may not happen, but I think that kind of thing is not particularly palatable for government, because ultimately the single biggest thing they're rightly concerned about is the farmers. But I think there has to be a combination of those two things. There's the demand side from the consumers, and there's the ability for those retailers to put on shelf what we think they're going to need, and then there's the regulation part. But yeah, I think the system is in a difficult way, and we absolutely need that cross-industry support to get into the right place. I don't know, what do you think, Evan?
I just echo some of that. The regulation is essential to provide that level playing field. So Tim talked about the EU deforestation regulation, which is meaning that you can't put anything on a shelf that has deforestation in it after a certain date. That's even mind-boggling to me, that we would still allow consumers to maybe have a product that contains deforestation and one that doesn't. So regulation is really important for those systemic issues that are cross-sector. We need that. We're starting to see on health, the sugar levy actually is really good because it encourages manufacturers to innovate and to find new ways of taking calories out of products. So has it had the health impact on the nation that we anticipated? Maybe not, but we do need that regulation. I think the piece around the retailers, I mean, obviously COVID, so many behaviours changed overnight. We wore masks, we social distanced, we hands faced and spaced. What else did we do? We were in bubbles. We did all kinds of weird and wonderful things. Eggs was probably the least of the concern. It was trying to get hold of flour and eggs to make bread and cakes and whatever else we were doing. So, but we should use those moments, and I don't think we've used them as effectively. So, but you need sectors to come together and say, we're just not going to accept that this is what we put on shelf, and things like housed battery chicken farms and things should just be taken away. That's absolutely where we need to work together. And then it's about collaborating. So it's how we work together across the supply chain on some of these fundamental issues. And one of them is regen ag and how we farm our land. We're facing a crisis in our food and farming sector. And if we don't come together, we're not going to see the ingredients we need in the future at the nutritional quality, the quantity. So it's not easy, but definitely collaboration is going to be fundamental for this.
Yeah, and dealing with things like waste, etc. I'd love this gentleman here to ask some questions. I'm worried you might not get time.
Thanks very much. Thank you. So I'm Dean Cooper. I'm the Global Energy Lead for WWF, which is probably a bit of a giveaway for my question. Is energy a key issue for food systems? And if so, do you have any particular approaches to where you're sourcing the energy from? Obviously, impacts on cost and climate and nature, etc. Thanks.
Happy to jump in and take that one. So yeah, energy is really important in the food system. And I'll speak from the food production point of view and even the processing side of things. So farms that we've bought in Iberia, we're converting to have, solar power generation on them. Effectively, you can get agreements where you're, using the grid as a battery, so that you're, for solar, you're producing power in the day. Any excess is sold onto the grid, and when you need it in the nighttime for irrigation, then the grid will give it back to you at a discount. So all those kind of things are important in production. In supply chain, it's also important. Our blueberry pack house is, blueberries, as soon as they're picked, they need to be right away. They start getting cooled on site and into cooling systems. There's a lot of energy requirement there. So, same deal goes for, our infrastructure around pack houses. And it's probably further up the supply chain is important as well. I'll also look at it, talk about it from another lens, going back to our introduction, investing in land use. So it's all about, land use, using land that should be used for food. Don't be, putting forests on land that should be used for food, and all those kinds of things. So then you go down another layer and you're like, okay, well, in our case, as food producers, we're sort of screening land, as a developer in the various areas that we're working in, saying, okay, well, where is this, land that should be used for producing food? And that we can do that regeneratively in the context of that area. And we select sites on that basis. Now we've got, a really robust farming model. But also, because we're capital and developers, we can go and also screen for those assets where, there's grid connection and features that will allow dual use to co-locate solar on there. So people call this agrivoltaics, and you can have that mixed with grazing. And what's even more exciting is mixing that with, tree crop. And we're looking now at, putting blueberries under solar panels. They're shade grown anyway. So, you're actually getting increase in yields underneath the panels. And if you look at the efficiency of that land use, take a tiny country like Ireland, where they're putting, I'll just wrap it up in a second, Claire. Ireland's really exciting because you can actually increase the footprint of the country by saying, okay, this is great pasture land. We're going to put, solar panels on there. Land is very scarce, and you just now have more resources for your country. Anyway, like Duncan, I get overexcited about certain things.
Don't worry, I've got the people organising. I know we're going to get thrown off, and I do. Were there any final? Duncan, did you want to say anything about energy, or anyone else have any? Just a little word, and then we'll
real
wrap
quick
up.
one. We've been so water again. I think we need to showcase if we think farmers are going to take a long-term view on how they're going to be more resilient around water. Forget it, because we're worried about how we're going to pay tomorrow's bills. But I think water companies can say, look, if we invest in you as a pilot, 4 or 5 of you together, showcase how you can actually put money back in your pocket by rainwater harvesting, for example. Actually, then you create real change because we can then start talking about, say, yeah, actually, look, I want a bit of that. I want a bit of that. So I think if you think we're going to there's so much pressure on the farmers to deliver everything for everybody. It's just not going to happen. So somehow we've got to stop pointing fingers. It's your fault. You fix it. We collectively try and work together and find solutions.
I think that the final note, I would just say, if any of you, I think we'd all say here to visit farms, connect with farms, buy from farmers directly. Do not think that local tiny growers cannot be the place to source from. They can. You can scale out, not just scale up. I know some amazing local projects. Connect with sustainable food places like that. Better trade. Food traders. There's so many amazing options out there. Get yourselves to Groundswell if you really want to learn this subject. It's the most amazing place. Lots of people are going there that aren't farmers, everyone in the food industry. And as Emma said, we all eat. But anyway, I'd really like to thank everyone here for their time, their expertise, and I hope they'll be at the back if you want to talk to them. Thank you so much, and thanks to all of you for being here.